Nubian Incognito.
Welcome to the Nubian Incognito podcast. Follow us on social media at Nubian Incognito. Use the hashtag Nubian Incognito if you have any responses or questions, or you just want to start a dialogue with other people. Share our playlist as well.
Welcome, and thank you guys for being here. I have a lovely male and female in here today. They're very, very dope individuals, and they're going to give their honest input on a few different topics and questions. So we're going to start off with something that we just kind of discussed just briefly. I like to add in topics that people just naturally end up discussing. And so what are some superstitions that you heard of or had someone tell you and when you were growing up?
For me, I know a big one was like sweeping feet. Like if you sweep someone's feet, like they won't get married. Another one is like splitting the pole when you're walking down the sidewalk.
Oh.
Like if you split the pole, you'll get hit by a bus.
So splitting the pole, is that when you're walking with someone, you guys have to stay on the same side of the pole?
Yes.
Okay. So if you don't, then someone's going to get hit by a car.
Apparently.
Okay. All right.
Well, I've heard a lot, such as not throwing your trash out at night because it means you're throwing out your money. And then a second one is like when you're standing as a woman, if you have your toes balled up, it means that you're killing your husband.
I've heard, it's funny because like I was in New York and one of my friends said, like when my feet aren't done and I feel like people are looking at them, I naturally curl them. He was just like, uncurl your feet because he was told that women who curl their feet are witches.
Yeah.
And I was like, dang, I'm just not trying to show you the effect that my big toe is not painted.
It's funny you say that because something that my grandmother has always said is like women with facial hair. She was like, stay far away from them because they're evil. I'm like, how? She's like, they're witches. I'm not sure why.
And what background is your grandmother?
She is actually Ghanaian.
Oh, wow. Okay. I do know a lot of African women with facial hair.
Me too.
But my thing is, naturally on a woman's face, hair grows naturally. So is it women who have facial hair and decide not to shave it off, or just women who grow facial hair in general?
I think she's talking more so, like women with like chin hairs, like like where so you can't really see it,
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's what she was more so talking about. But I ended up finding out that's like actually is due to I think estrogen or something like that, like an imbalance. Yeah, it's like an imbalance.
Yeah, men and women both have, depending on like your gene set, you can have different imbalances of different things, which is why some men have breasts kind of, and some women have flat chests and things like that. Any other superstitions, you guys?
Well, of course, the classic step on a crack, you break your mama's back.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, I've heard a lot though. I think the one that really stood out to me the most growing up was if someone walks over your legs, trying to cross over, they need to walk back the opposite way or else you won't grow. But I think that just comes out of, the fact that it's just kind of rude.
Yeah. I feel like a lot of like superstitions things are put into place just to get people to like not do things.
I agree.
When you spoke about the broom sweeping, I thought about jumping the broom. That is a African American thing.
Pretty sure that's where it comes from to some extent because slaves couldn't get married, so they would jump the broom as a sign of marriage. So
yeah.
Still supposed to keep that going to this day.
Right.
I know one for me that I'm such a klutz. So anytime it would happen, I'm like, dang, if you open an umbrella indoors, that you're going to have like years of bad luck. Yeah. And unfortunately, I've been in situations where it's like raining and it's like, well, I don't want to like close the umbrella now. Like I'm trying to be safe inside. Right. Yeah. Or like I want to open it before I go outside. They're like, oh, you're going to have bad luck. And I'm like, oh.
Breaking a mirror.
Yeah, using a broken mirror is bad luck too.
I think like salt, putting salt over
if
your...
If you spill salt, you got to throw it over one of your shirts. I'm not sure what it is.
Yeah, I've heard that one also. But it's just interesting how, like, I feel like every culture has some type of superstition. And if they don't currently, like, adhere to it today, it was definitely very prevalent back then. Before there was science, there was a lot of superstition because you have to find...
You didn't know how to explain anything. And that was our way. That's where religion and all... Pretty much everything.
I agree.
Especially older religions where they worship, like, the sun.
Right. But, I mean, like, I know... I'm sorry.
Oh, go ahead.
But I know, like, in the African culture, there's still a lot of things to justify certain things that happen, like, such as I lose jewelry all the time. And so I was telling my grandmother, she was like, it's just a sacrifice. When you lose gold or you lose, like, something that's really important to you, it's a sacrifice. That's something bad was supposed to happen to you. But because you lost that one thing, it's no longer going to happen to you. Whether that's true or not, maybe it's just to help you get over it. Maybe it's also true. Who knows?
Yeah, I've heard the one where I was telling my old pastor's wife that I keep losing things, and she was like, "Oh, you're probably cursed." Yeah, and she was like, "There's like curses that people put on you, so that you constantly lose things, so that you just never will become wealthy." And she told me to pray over it because it was getting bad. And the thing is, I would always lose large sums of money randomly. So, for example,
that is the thing.
My freshman year, my dad gave me all my money for my books and like groceries and everything. It was in January before the semester started. It was like $1,400 or $1,600. Gave it to me in an envelope. And like now that I'm learning like numerology and I'm learning like different aspects, I've learned that I have a very strong intuition. And something that day told me, go straight to the bank. And when I got to campus, my friends were like, let's go to the caf. I literally parked on campus illegally and went straight to the caf, and I had forgotten that I had I don't know how it was in my hands with something else. I think I had it in my hand. It was like in my wallet or like tucked into my wallet because it was in an envelope, but my wallet wasn't closed all the way. Long story short, I lost it in the caf. Like I was still in the caf, and then I realized it wasn't with me. And yeah, I lost my entire wallet. So I didn't have my IDs. I didn't have my student. I had nothing pretty much. And I was 4 hours away from home. When I was in middle school, my dad had gave me like $600 because I was going shopping with my friends, and I was supposed to buy like a season pass for Carowinds and get my hair done. Like I was like going, it was a summer thing. I was going to someone's house. So obviously my parents are giving me money. We went to the bowling alley. I bought a locker, put all the money in my bag in the locker because someone else was picking us up from the bowling alley. Not bowling alley, the skating rink. Someone broke into my locker and took it out.
I always tell myself that when things like that happen, it's because maybe someone needs it more. But all things that you get that aren't earned always come back in turn. And what I mean by that is, for example, if you steal something, I know growing up, my thing was always, something my parents always emphasized was if you steal, especially if it's someone's hard-earned money, just know that's probably the last thing that you're ever going to get in your life. Like, yeah, so you don't steal people's stuff because that person's always going to think about it. And one thing in African culture that you don't do is steal something that someone has worked for. Because the person, every other person's going to think about it. Every other person's they're not going to wish the best on you. So all of those different things are going to accumulate, and usually those people who steal are usually stuck in those same positions for the rest of their lives.
It's funny that you say that because growing up, like I went to like an IB school, and I would always get integrity awards, and I feel like part of that was because I was raised with those same African values as well. I'm not an angel, but I would say one sin that I don't feel comfortable doing is stealing. Like, I get paranoid. Like, I remember when I was a kid, I took like a sticker from a coloring book, like a sticker page from a coloring book. I was so scared that I told my dad that I had to go take it back. And he was just like, what? Like, this is not that serious. But like, because especially, I don't know if it's all West African countries, but Ghanaians especially, they take stealing very, very, very seriously. And like, I'm not trying to throw any other African countries or Caribbean countries under the bus, but even when you look at a list of corrupt countries, countries that have the same values as Ghana's typically are a little bit higher on the list for having more integrity, because we do have those values. Like if you scam or if you steal, you're gonna be frowned down upon. You know,
I agree.
Literally, in some people, killing someone is like it's like not even as bad as stealing. When I was in Ghana, there was a situation of someone getting their hand cut off because they were stealing. Like it's that serious. Mm-hmm.
I didn't know it happened in like African countries, but I've heard about it in like Eastern European countries and things of that nature.
Yeah, back home, well, you know, my mother's side is Ghanaian, and they migrated to Ivory Coast for a better life, I guess. And my grandmother her father was, he made jewelry, gold, silver, things of that sort. And one day the maid stole it. She went mad, like she went crazy. And so it's really, like you're right, it's really frowned upon because of also the repercussions. You never know, and you never know who's who.
And just when you have like just all the things that Africans go through, and not just Africans in general, but you have to have some type of code, because when you don't have that type of integrity system built, everyone is just good. It's just going to be this big sense of anarchy. One question I would have for you is, growing up African American, what are some, I don't like to say sins, because I mean, I don't like to put people in a religious box, but what are some things that are heavily frowned upon that you would feel like universally people generally would scold you for it, and you would understand like, okay, this is universally not acceptable? For me, growing up Ghanaian, stealing was one of those things that was kind of like universally unacceptable, as well as using your left hand to give people things and not greeting. Those are like the top three things for me. So what are some like black code rules as African Americans? It's like if you don't do it universally, people would frown on you upon.
I think definitely disrespect to your elders is like one of the most like frowned upon things. But like things to the nature of like stealing and stuff, like that's not really, like of course nobody wants to be called a thief, but it's like I remember openly knowing that people in my family stole, and like it not being like to the point where it was like, oh, you going to jail or anything of that nature. But at the same time, like my mother didn't do it. But buying stolen goods, and because I'm from a low income neighborhood, buying stolen goods was like a way to get nicer things and things of that nature. So
I feel like sometimes when you look at hip hop culture, it's kind of glorified.
It is. It's very much glorified. But I think a misconception about hip hop culture is that like it promotes like crime, but in all actuality, it's just like reflective. It's like a documentary of what's going on. Most rappers don't actually do what they talk about. They're just reflecting what's going on in the hood.
I never looked at it like that. It's true.
I know a lot of African Americans say it takes a village to raise a child. Were you ever scolded by someone else's parents?
I think in the like newer area, it's not really as like accepted, but like anybody in my family, I could have got a whooping from. I wasn't really with people that weren't family or that weren't like family ever, except in school. Like a lot of my mom's friends, I don't actually call them like my mom's friends; they're my aunts. And like,
that's the same in our culture. Yeah. I wouldn't dare call anyone Mrs. anything. However, I have noticed that really wealthy African men do prefer you call them Mr. or something, because when you're that wealthy, if everyone's calling you uncle, they're going to be expecting some monetary value from you. So
yeah,
there was a bit.
I think the modern day African is a little different than, you know, the old school African, because that is true. Going back home, I said, hey auntie, hey auntie to somebody, and she was like, I'm not your auntie. And I was like,
I've had that said to me too. I've had someone be like, I'm not your uncle. I'm like, oh, okay.
All right. Well, ever since then, honestly, if I don't know you like that, whether you're family or you're not, I hit you with the hello, madame, monsieur, and that's it. But, and from there, I mean, depending on my parents, if it's someone who's close, they'll be like, oh, no, this is your uncle, yeah. But if not, hello, sir, hello, ma'am, and I'm gone. That's it.
It's like generalized African American culture to just like call like people, even like famous people, auntie and like uncle, like Auntie B, like people call Beyonce Auntie B or something of that nature. Like recently there was this thing with Oprah and Gail.
Mm-hmm. And Ava DuVernay or something like that?
Yeah, Ava DuVernay.
Okay, yep.
And they didn't like being called auntie.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of people in Black culture were like coming after them, Black Twitter, going crazy. Yeah, they were like, wow, that's really messed up. Because like, that's a general conception. But when you brought up the fact that a lot of like rich people in African culture don't like being called that because they expect reciprocation, like it kind of made sense because maybe that's the same thing for them.
Not only that, they also felt like they would be associated with being old when they're called auntie, which I personally feel like, I mean, you are an auntie if you've accepted non-formal responsibility of someone else's child at one point.
I think another thing is like, let's be honest, like Oprah is grandma age. Like, Oprah and
Yeah.
grandma age.
True.
And I'm not sure exactly how old Ava is, but I would assume that she's like in her.
They're all in the auntie crew.
Yeah.
But they know.
It's preference because
Some of them great auntie.
it's preference. It really is preference because, well, as annoying it is to say, a lot of my grandfathers have married younger women. And so, even calling them auntie or, definitely not grandma because you're not my grandmother, but auntie, they don't like it. Even for myself as 23, if a kid calls me auntie, as kids have tried, I was like, just call me by my name because I don't like it. I feel like it makes me feel older. I feel like even as I age, until I have kids, please refer to me as my name.
I can relate to that. I feel like now that I'm getting older and I see people older than me getting older, I definitely respect my youth because it's
Right.
like it goes away day by day. So if there's an opportunity to still be considered young in any way, then I could see why people would strive to keep that because one thing we can't control is time.
Tell me about it. I could go back.
But yeah, that's dope. I like to understand people's perspectives, especially coming from different backgrounds and things like that. So it's interesting to see the similarities and differences amongst the two. So both of you guys have graduated from college. Congratulations. And being Black in America and attending school, you learn about Black culture, and college has a very big thing to do with that. College for Black people in America is the stepping stone to making it out of current situations. It's where people have an opportunity to leave where they come from and meet other people in an area and learn with similar or unsimilar goals. People choose paths of going to PWIs, HBCUs, and now there's online schools and community colleges that's becoming a bit more popular. So tell me a bit about where you went to school.
Do you want the actual name?
You don't have to say the name, but did you go to a HBCU? Did you go to a PWI?
I went to a HBCU, one of the greatest ones, if I do say so myself.
Okay. We'll let our guest guess which one he's talking about.
I think it was very dope for me coming from a low income neighborhood. I had never seen it. I expected a lot of people to be from me. I'm just a smart kid, from a bad side of town, and I was never involved in street stuff. But I kind of expected most people to be like that at my school. But my school is a school that gives a lot of people second chances. So there were people that were involved in the street stuff. There were also rich people. And I had never really seen Black rich people because my family. My adopted family, they kind of adopted me and my mom. They're pretty wealthy for our area, but these people were actually well off. And that was different. Freshmen driving BMWs and Mercedes. It opened my eyes up to a different world and raised my standards for myself.
I had a conversation not too long ago with someone who attended an HBCU, and she was saying the same thing. One of her favorite things about going to an HBCU is she saw Black people of all different backgrounds. She knew Black people who had lived in a car up until they came to college. She knew Black people who, like you said, were extremely wealthy, wealthy where you would think that they would be famous because their parents were so wealthy. She met Black people who had came from other countries. She met Black people who were drug dealers. She knew Black people who were models. Like, you see every type of Black person in the HBCU in every context. And for me, growing up as with immigrant parents, when it's time to go to college, at least when I was going to college, I honestly did have a negative perspective or view on HBCUs, because the impression was that if you go to this type of school, there's going to be like this lower impression of you. And now that I'm older and I understand Blackness in general, and I also like to point out that when it comes to HBCUs, there's a whole continent full of HBCUs, and that's Africa. That same thing happens there. You can go to college and everyone's Black because it's a Black continent. Same thing in the Caribbean. So I would say to people who are listening, if you are looking for international opportunities and you still want to support Black schools, consider schools in Black continents that also need funding as well. But I do like the fact that we have an interesting dynamic here. Tell me a little bit about your college choice. Did you go to a HBCU or a PWI?
I definitely went to a PWI, and it wasn't much of a culture shock because my entire life I went to white schools, with the exception of middle school, in which I went to a predominantly Black school, in which, I mean, I didn't grow up wealthy, but my parents I came from a good situation, you know, and so while I was there, I felt like an outcast, you know. I mean, yeah, basically.
When you say outcast, what do you mean?
Oh, I was always teased because, I mean, at the time, well, not at the time, my mom had a nice car. My mom drove a Benz, and I didn't go to school within my district, so my mom had to come pick me up, as she had to drop me off in the morning.
Same with me.
Yeah, and so one day I was like waiting for my mom. This girl called me a rich bitch, and I was just like, whoa! And literally everyone continued to call me a rich bitch, and I was like, you know, I'm not wealthy. I mean, like, my parents just were able to come here and do what they needed to do for themselves. That's it. When I went to white schools, I went to a white high school as well, a predominantly white high school, excuse me. I was the token Black girl. And I realized that in college. Yeah.
When you say you realized that in college, what part of being a token did you realize, and how did you come to that?
So I had, I didn't have a lot of white friends, but I had enough. But I did have a lot of Black friends who were just like me. And so this one white friend in particular, we hung out, and then we went out with her friends and whatnot. And the way she introduced me is when I realized, like, oh, wow. You're the token, sis. And she introduced me as, oh, this is, you know, and she travels, she speaks French. And I was just like, she's like, yeah, she just came back from France. And I was just like, wait a minute. They didn't need to know that. Like, I don't think it's important for people to know what I do and where I go.
She was basically trying to validate you to her people.
Right. And they were looking at me like, oh my gosh, like, can you say something? In which I definitely hate when people say that. And I was like, no, I can't. And so shortly after I left that situation, I reflected on it, and I was like, yeah, you're definitely the token, and block her. And from there, I tried to immerse myself within the Black community at my PWI. And, you know, I realized that there were a lot of people like me, but there were also a lot of people who weren't like me. And that was the first time I was ever exposed. Well, I was exposed to it before, but it was the first time I ever really sat there and realized, like, maybe you were a little privileged, sis. Maybe just a little bit. Which was cool, because it taught me a lot. It taught me how to be independent. It taught me how to do things for myself, you know, just the basics, really.
That's interesting that you bring that up, because I would say my high school was pretty mixed. My middle school and elementary school was not. Up until high school, I had gone to predominantly Black schools that were in low-income areas that were magnet schools. I would say one thing that I learned when I got to college is that depending on where people live, they could have a better education than you. And that's when you have to, like, you know, really find out where you really play into that. And attending a PWI, it's like, wow, like, you're competing against other Black people, because as bad as it sounds, like, I've personally felt like, especially when I went to two different universities, the second one that I went to, I felt like you have to be super duper competitive to be that important Black person so that you can get certain opportunities because they were so limited. So I can only imagine the empowerment and things like that that went on at HBCUs because of opportunities for everyone, you know? And one thing that I noticed when I went to my second university is that a lot of Black students were quote unquote doing the most, that being joining a lot of organizations, taking leadership positions, even though they may or may not be qualified for it, just for the sake of going Greek. And I know today that both of you guys did decide to join a Greek organization, which you don't have to mention with specific one, but I would like to talk to you guys just about like your different experiences in being in a Black Greek organization at your school, specifically starting with you since you went to a PWI. What was some of the main differences between a Black Greek organization and a white Greek organization?
First,
or other cultural organizations?
I would like to add on to something you were saying earlier as far as like people doing the most to go Greek. Yeah, that definitely was the case at my school in question. But the thing is, you have to have certain attributes in order to be a part of this Greek letter organization. I mean, overall, be part of Greek life because you're the quote unquote model student for your, I don't want to say for your school, because at PWI, you were really overshadowed a lot by the Panhellenic and IFC, which is the male, predominantly white fraternities. But it really does open a lot of doors for you. But I will say that my experience as a D9 Greek member at a PWI was very interesting. And when I say interesting, it's not really in the best way. I would have wished I would have crossed elsewhere, honestly, especially not at my PWI, because oftentimes how you're treated and how the others are treated, there's a big difference. For example, this year they tried to shut down the traditional things that we do, step shows, homecoming. And the reason why was because they didn't feel like we really necessarily needed it.
And when you say they, this is the school board in relations to D9 at your university?
Administration in general.
Okay.
Going back to the chancellor. And I found that to be kind of bizarre because that's one of the best ways to showcase your organization. And not only that, in order to make money for your organization or your chapter rather. And so just in everything we try to do, they shut it down. You know, we're frowned upon because we're not big numbers, although we're prestige organizations and we keep our numbers low for a reason compared to, you know, Panhellenic and IFC who have a vast number of members who half the time do nothing, you know. But because they bring in more money, they're able to do so much because they have larger numbers. We're looked at as less impactful and not as
prestigious.
Well, I wouldn't say less prestigious, but not really a necessity, and that we don't really contribute to campus. We've had meetings about it. We've sat down and talked about it, and they feel like they don't feel that we have a big impact on campus, although we do, but just not with all of the other, communities? I don't know.
Did you all interact with the, other types of Greek organizations? Like, was there, a community of Greeks, or was it just Black Greeks and then, other cultural Greeks and then white Greeks?
I wish the listeners could see how hard I rolled my eyes because we would have, D9 organizations, NPHC, we would reach out to Panhellenic, we would reach out to IFC, but would they reach back out to us is a no. We would sit down and have conversations. Literally the chancellor and then the person over Greek Life would sit, each member or at least a few representatives from each council. We would sit down and talk about what we can do, why we aren't connecting, and etc. And ask me if anything would work. Nothing. We even had a mandatory retreat where you had to send members of each organization to go to this retreat in order to think about different ways to collaborate, think about ways to solve the different issues that we have on campus as a whole, not as Panhellenic, MPHC, MGC, and IFC, but instead as Greeks in general. But, while we were there, everything was peachy. We talked about it. We sat there and really made sure that, okay, we exchanged numbers with so-and-so. We're going to do this. We're going to sit down and do this. And when we got back to ECU, when we got back to campus, no one knew each other. When we reached out again, nothing. To even come to our events to support us was never seen. But I will say that our MPHC and MGC made an effort to try to collaborate on a lot of stuff. But, they had more success with, the other councils than we did.
So are you suggesting that, Asian or Hispanic Greeks were able to collaborate more with white Greeks than black Greeks?
Not suggesting it, it's fact.
Okay.
They would, and I think the really reason why is because they saw the profit behind it, because they did do some events and they were able to turn a lot of profit.
Do you think it's because those other Greeks are not black as well?
I really hate putting race and stuff, so I don't know.
Okay.
I'm not sure why, but I remember having a conversation with a female from Panhellenic, and she said the only reason why she would be scared to reach out to us is because she felt like we would turn them down, or she was just scared. And I was like, I didn't know that we bit people. Yeah, I didn't know we bit people or we attacked people when they came up to us. We're the most friendly organization, and all of us are friendly. If you're scared, find someone in which you feel comfortable with. The NPHC president at the time was so friendly and well known. So I felt like everything they were saying were excuses and they were invalid.
I remember when my freshman year at a PWI, I just felt like just the experience of being black and white was completely different. You could see buses, these white kids could miss class just so they could pledge. During the day, they would have buses and you would go to some buildings. They would have lunches. It seemed like they were literally living a whole nother entrance experience than the black kids. And the thing is, not only that, but it's almost like we couldn't even know what was going on. How do you even understand what goes on? And it's not even it's as secretive or as low key as NPHC, but it's you can tell just the way that its flight is to keep people out of it. They don't even bother to educate or have people understand what's going on. I would just see buses of white girls or I would just see people in the evening walking around, and it'd be in numbers, and they would be able to miss class. I remember my first week, this girl was she was missing class to pledge, or it was the second week. It was in the beginning, and I was just what? This same professor is going to give me hell if I miss class for being sick, but they just get a pass just to do something like that, you know?
You know what's funny? It's even down to the discipline, and even before I get to that, it's funny you say that because that is true. We try to get fundings for buses and stuff, and they shut us down. They were trying to get rid of us once upon a time on campus, saying that if we were able to have a certain number, in which we could have, but that means you have less quality people in your organizations, which doesn't do much for you. And so they were saying that if we didn't have at least 16 to 20 people, that you're kicked off of campus. Meanwhile, these organizations are very vital to the Black community on campus. Not only do we, and not even just Black community on campus and also off campus, we do so much for the communities that surround our campus, and even for the students on campus, we do a lot. But down to the discipline, you will see the D9, or MPHC rather, organizations face more hardship and go through more.
When you say go through, disciplinary actions.
Disciplinary actions compared to the other orgs. The other orgs, they really just slide under the table. They act like they turn an eye to it. But let you do something, and you and your entire chapter is pulled off campus. The charter, everything's gone. Just like that.
Yeah, and we've heard of stories like that, and even just with certain things that came out on the news about a certain Greek organization, you can see the difference. People can literally be in the hospital from hazing accusations that are in white Greek organizations, and they're allowed to graduate. They're allowed to continue. They get partial suspensions. My one last question for you is, what advice would you give to someone who is attending a PWI and is considering going Greek?
Go Greek. I mean, consider your options. Like, when I say consider your options, obviously don't go to... Consider what you're trying to do. If you want to join Panhellenic, do it. You know, have your reason. I mean...
Don't do it.
Why do you say don't do it?
Go ahead.
Especially if you're... No, answer.
I don't know. A girl that actually went to a university that I grew up with, and she was very, like, I don't know, she just seemed like she came back very crazy. She was out here dating outside of her race. I mean, which is okay, but she just looked like she didn't look very well. She seemed
unhappy, or
like, and she seemed very happy. She just seemed like something was off. And like now, last time I checked up on her, she became like a medium, like tarot card reader type of thing. And we have a cousin in common, but on separate sides of the family. And like in her family, she's considered like very crazy. Yeah, she joined Pan when she was at that school. My kids ain't trying to know Pan.
I mean,
I'll let them do whatever they want.
I want my kid to at least join my sorority, but, you know, you see the light wherever you see the light. But, I mean, I did ask someone, you're Black, like, why did you go and join IFC? And he told me he didn't really know about D&I, and I was like, that's an excuse, tell me something different. And he said that he felt welcome there. That, I mean, there's some people who don't feel necessarily, I don't want to say comfortable with Black people, but some people have that complex. Like, some people just simply feel more comfortable with white people or people from different backgrounds that other than themselves. Because it's not just IFC. On my campus, I saw other people joining the Latin fraternities, and they're Black. I mean, where you fit in, yeah, where you smoke good, you feel good.
A lot of it is like Blackness can be very restricting in America. And, like, me growing up, like, because I spoke well for the most part, I was, like, called white. Like, I remember I grew up, I didn't live in my hometown when I was, like, very little. I went to elementary school in another city, like, a good ways away. So, like, I would come home and I'd be with my cousins who were, like, even less well off than I was, and they'd be like, why do you talk like that, this, that, and the third? And that's kind of when I really learned how to speak slang, because they didn't like really rock with how I talk. And then like even in high school, like, I specifically took myself out of the regular course classes and put myself in honors courses, because I knew if I was going to be in class with my friends, I wasn't going to get my work done. It was too many distractions. And I have ADHD, so like, I can't have too many distractions. I'm going to distract myself as it is. So like, I think like white culture can just be more accepting of us because they think that we're cool. So they kind of like having like the
that
Black
tokenism
folks around, and like that makes it.
Not even that. I feel like some of them have a quota to meet, especially now when you have diversity, inclusion being as important as gold. You need that Black person so you can present, hey, like we're diverse. We're diverse.
Nonsense.
But there are people that I know that did join these kinds of organizations. I know people that joined it and ended up realizing they were a token and not even associating. And I think like being someone that's not in a Greek organization, one thing I've noticed is post-graduation, there's still that community after. And I feel like for a lot of white Greeks or whatever, it dies. Like being Greek is like joining a club, like literally signing up for the Spanish club. And like, that's kind of how it is. And granted, like they have all these resources. Like I've been to a lot of colleges in my life, and like, it's very rare to see like a Black Greek house, but white Greek houses is like the norm. And they have, some of them are like really nice places to live. I knew people who had chefs and maids in the houses that they stayed in.
Do you know how much they pay by month?
Yeah, their parents have it. If
they
not,
pay like $4,000 a month.
yeah,
$4,000.
or
Shit.
$4,000 a month
That's like a semester
for a house. Yeah.
So when you went to an HBCU, did they have Black Greek housing?
Hell no.
Wow.
For my school, we're a public HBCU. So like we get most of our funding from the state, and we're discriminated against by the state quite often. So I think like Black Greek houses would be considered like a liability because if anything bad goes on, you know, the news is gonna break it. Black fraternity, such, this, and the third. Someone died at their party the other night because, like, like even like during our homecoming, because it's one of the most popular around. It's like sometimes people will die during the homecoming, and usually it's not HBCU students. Like, it's not people from my school.
It's people visiting.
Yeah, and it's like people that weren't really involved with the school. Recently, somebody from the school did pass away. It was 2 students that passed away, but they weren't killed by anybody. Well, the person that killed them never was caught, but I think it's like a known fact that the person that killed them didn't go to the school. And it's like just people from the community, maybe not even the actual community surrounding the school, but just somebody that was in the area trying to enjoy our experience that killed them because they couldn't get into the party, which is very ignorant. I think weird, like, it's kind of weird because we go through a lot of the things that y'all go through, like as a D9 organization on a PWI campus, because we're kind of like, I don't want to say tokenism, but like we're kind of like sheltered, like, and restricted to do certain things until it benefits our university.
Explain a little bit more.
Like, we're very limited about like we get in trouble if we like break out into step randomly, like in front of the CAF. Like, I remember, I think it might have been my sophomore year. My sophomore year, it was a organization. It wasn't a D9 organization, honorary band organization. They got kicked off of campus during their charter week. No, was it their charter week or their founding week? One of the two, for stepping in front of the CAF without a permit. And it's like, this is our university. We pay to go here. We pay our dues to the university to be an organization. Why do we have to go through so much red tape just to step? Like, and it's like, it's so much red tape around things, and it doesn't make sense.
So you're saying that going to an HBCU and being in a D9 organization, you still don't feel like you can be as black as you want to be?
No, I mean, I wouldn't say necessarily black. It's just
expressive.
Like, we aren't given the amount of freedom that we should. And it's not really even just a D9 thing. I think it's just like, in all, we're just like, they try to shelter the students at my school.
What are some examples of being sheltered? So I'm trying to wrap my head around what you mean by sheltered.
Like, we would try to have parties in front of the CAF as a general student body, and the police would come and shut them down, like the campus police, and like, nobody's complaining. It's like, everybody's a college student. We all out there partying.
It's a liability thing.
Yeah, it is.
But at PWI, people have stuff in front of the CAF, but you get in trouble for that. You get fined, or you cannot no longer like do those things. And there's definitely repercussions for it. Is there a high prestige of being a D9 at an HBCU? Or are you like considered the elite of the student body?
Extremely, for no reason. Well, I wouldn't say no reason, but it's like certain groups, like the student government organizations, like SGA, student union activities. I hope nobody figures out that this is me, but
they won't.
But it's like a circle. It's like 5 organizations, and like D9 is like where it's like one of those. Like, if you're in those, you're like the in crowd. And I was kind of like, before joining D9, I wasn't really like popular. I didn't really join for the popularity. So like that part kind of got on my nerves. Like, the people treating me differently because I was Greek, and treating me like I was better than other people, or treating me like I thought I was better than other people. Like, friends I had for years, like, oh, you changed, this, that, and the third. Like, I didn't change. I
would never understand that.
I just didn't have as much time as I had for you before. And I'm sorry about that. But like, if you're going to act crazy, I'm just not going to talk to you. They don't
understand what comes with Greek life, the responsibility, and then also like all of the different tasks that you now have, and all the meetings, all of the different things you have to go to, all of the practices, all the things you have to prepare for, and then on top of that, your own life.
Exactly.
It's really frustrating.
I know, like, as a neo, that's when most of it happened, like, right after I crossed. The people, like, my main core friends, and some people that were, like, associates, they just, like, started asking for my time, like, now that I was back around, because I had to take a little chunk of my social life out. And I didn't have as much time because I was trying to be social with my line brothers and like the other D9 organizations on campus. And it just was, I was ridiculed for it basically. One of my, like we're all still friends for the most part, but like one of the friends, like she legit like cut me off. And it's like even now, like she still talks about it like she's mad, like on the low.
So when you say that, like I said, being someone that's like considered like on the outside or GDI or whatever, is that how you say it? GDP or something
GDI.
like GDI. I've definitely had like a lot of friends that did join Greek organizations, and it's funny to hear both sides because I have had friends that changed after they joined Greek organizations, and I feel like everyone wants to believe that they don't, but I definitely, from what I understand about the process, you are supposed to change. So I definitely
process.
definitely what you just said, or just going Greek in general. Like there is something that is supposed to change about you because it's something that you work to achieve or whatever. So it's interesting to hear you say that because it is something that's common that people say.
I definitely think I changed. No question about it. And I know people in Greek like who are like, oh yeah, that other person that's Greek changed a lot before. Like a lot of people do change. But I think for the majority, like most people change for the better. But like even my friends back home treated me different. They just thought for some reason that I would think that I was better than them. But at the end of the day, I was still myself. I just had different, like newer things about me. Yeah, definitely.
Okay, so how is your Greek life after graduation? Like how has it changed? How have you transitioned from being a student to just a
I'm gonna go
member?
first.
My situation's different.
Okay, so you can go ahead and answer.
Okay, for me, a lot of people don't stay active in their organization right afterwards. I decided to. It's very expensive, so I understand why.
Is it worth the money?
Definitely. I think you made a lifetime commitment to your organization, so if you can't afford it, you should most definitely stay active. But, I mean, if you don't, it's not like we're going to treat you different because you don't. You just, more than anything, the financial part isn't the most important, but never stop representing your organization in a positive light and always give back and do community service.
What is one thing you would say to your pre-Greek self now?
I think I probably would, maybe I would learn to have been, I had to learn to be political. It was like before when I didn't represent myself because the community I grew up in, we were very blunt and everybody made fun of each other, this, that, and the third. And I had to kind of understand that everybody didn't do that. I kind of made, I don't want to say enemies, but for lack of a better term, that's what I'm going to say. People would like complain about my mouth because it's very smart. I mean, to be honest, I have a smart mouth. So I think I probably would tell him like to watch what you do because what you do doesn't just represent you, it represents your organization as well. I think that's one thing I do miss though, like just being able to say what I want.
Yeah.
I agree.
What is one thing you would tell your pre-Greek self?
Well, I don't know. I think I don't know. That's a good question. And I have a really hard time answering it. Because prior to, like he just said, I was arrogant. Yes, I was. Let me not lie. I was very arrogant. But now I'm really humbled. And I take the time to really reflect before I say something. And also, I don't really get mad like I used to. Like, nothing takes me there. You can say what you want to do. I mean, you can say whatever. You can do whatever you want to do. I'm just going to look at you. I don't know. Okay. I'm not sure what I would say to my pre-Greek self.
Okay, so I have another question that's quite controversial. How do you feel about white people joining D9 or Black Greek organizations?
I have a white line sister in which I've grown to love her.
Okay, that's positive.
Right. Tell me about it. Initially, like, joining the organization, there are a lot of things that I didn't agree with that she would say, she felt like she could use the N-word, in which is never acceptable.
Ever.
And she tried to justify it, being that she had other Black friends / associates who would permit her to use it.
Did you all teach her about Black culture?
Girl, did we? Yes, we did.
Okay.
And it's not, and we've learned that, at least I learned that it's not really her fault because she comes from a background where her parents are not necessarily accepting of.
So basically, she had racist parents and decided to join a Black Greek organization.
Yeah, she didn't tell anybody until she joined, and you know, I mean, I've learned that she doesn't go about it the right way, but she does have appreciation for Black culture.
Do you think that she joined to validate herself in the Black community or get her foot in the door?
No, I don't think so, because who would do this? Who would do this just for that?
People do that.
No.
I feel you're right, but
People literally just date Black people just so they can validate
that they're not racist.
Call it the Kardashians.
I know her, and I don't think that's what she did. But, well, I know her to a certain extent. I don't think that's what she did, but...
she doesn't fit in with white people. I'll tell you that much. She definitely does not fit in with white people. She'll try, but she does not fit in. And she'll tell you straight up, like, I don't like what you're doing. You know, Black people are like this. There's no reason for you to think this. They're like this, you know.
Well, so why did she say the N-word?
She felt like she didn't think it was a big problem because other people had allowed her to.
People gotta stop letting people say the word and then complaining about it later. Because I feel like almost every white person I know that uses that kind of language, someone didn't check them and they thought it was cool. I feel like there are some white people that like say it and then look around like, okay, nothing happened, so I'm good. And then they just kind of continue. But continue.
So, you know, when we're in the process of joining the organization, a pro-fight asked her, "You're white. What are you doing here?" And I don't quite remember her response, but she did highlight the things that she liked about the organization. She highlighted the fact that she didn't feel like she fit in anywhere else other than this organization. I will say that out of everyone on our line, she does the most for our organization. She went to her school and founded a chapter there. You know, she's really involved. Honestly, this girl, she bleeds the colors of our... She bleeds and breathes the colors of our organization. You know, we don't always agree with her because, I mean, there are cultural differences at the end of the day, which she would never understand, and which is not her fault. But I would say she tries. And so sometimes I see why people say they're not okay with white people joining our organizations, but it's 2019. We're moving towards progression. Like, you can't exclude them for that. You can't continue to exclude them at the end of the day. I mean...
You can.
I mean, tell me how you feel about it, especially you going to an HBCU and like everything you said. How do you feel about it? Like, would you feel okay with having because there are white people in other cultures that attend HBCUs and some of them do end up joining Greek organizations. So how do you feel about that?
I had a homeboy that wanted to be in Greek, and it was not the same organization I wanted to be in. He like tried to get me to go talk to him with them. I think personally he thought it was cool. He didn't end up joining. But
cool, like he respected, or cool, like it'll look nice on his Instagram?
Nah, like cool, like clout chasing. Like, oh yeah, I'm gonna get hoes if I do this, that, and the third. So, but I don't think he definitely wasn't racist. Well, I wouldn't say wasn't racist. I think I'll get back to that later. Knowing her line sister and like the things that she just said about her, like I think if there was a white person that I would want to join, like she would be pretty close to what I would want them to act like. I think a big thing about white people interacting with the Black community is
especially in specifically Black spaces.
Yes. I think they tell us that they aren't racist, and I don't think that's enough anymore. Racism has like transformed itself. I'm actually reading a book about that.
What's the name of the book?
It's called White Fragility. It's actually written by a white woman who was a diversity trainer. And she's speaking to white people in the book about about acknowledging your racism. Everybody, especially in America, is definitely prejudiced to some degree. And like, I think one thing we do is like, we deny it. Whether that is racism, homophobia, transphobia, xenophobia, all those good old long words. And I think when it comes to a white person joining my organization, I want them to be actively anti-racist and to acknowledge their preference, their prejudice, and
privilege.
Yeah, and you have to be able to call people out, and
I want to see it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
And
What
like,
you saying to me if when your parents come to our little whatever thing
Exactly.
afterwards, you know, like, are you actively representing us correctly when you go home for Thanksgiving break? Like, how are you speaking about Black people when we're not around?
That's across all walks of
That's a
life.
whole
Like, you need to be
different conversation.
anti-bigotry. You need to be anti-homophobia. You need to be
Do you
like,
feel like they need to work harder to get into these organizations?
I think
Yes.
we have enough letter wearers as it is who are our color, and we don't need any
Say it again.
in any of any other race. Like, we don't, like, we have enough. We don't need you to come in and just do it for the clout. You know?
Agreed.
So
So, you know, being on the other side, you know, looking for future sorors, if you will, or just people coming in as interests. And sometimes, you know, I mean, if they're of another race, you look at them a little harder. Like, what are you really doing here? And what's your real intentions? And what do you want? Basically, the overall question is, what do you want from us? And what can you do for us? And which we can do in turn for you.
Do you feel like white people have the right to do that over their own organizations?
Yeah, because, I mean, for me, I feel like, yeah, because we do it. Like, why not? I mean, at the end of the day, if D9 wants to stay Black, I'm not against it. But I'm not against it being open to other people because I don't think diversity is bad. But when you look at the reason in which we were founded, it's for a specific reason. It was for us due to, you know, the time in which it was founded. I know for my organization, you know, at the time, there was not a lot of organizations for women, okay, and which are good for, like, you know, education, higher education, and things of that sort, you know, and I don't know, it was for predominantly Black women, being that, well, it wasn't predominantly, it was for Black women, being that Black women were not allowed into these other organizations, you know, especially women of darker tones, in which I'm a chocolate sister myself. Yeah, so, I mean, we're hard on them. I don't feel like sometimes we're as hard as we need to be. Sometimes I hate the fact that we glorify white people or people of other ethnicities in our organizations. I'm like, why are we doing that? And I see that a lot on social media. Why? What are they doing that's so special that we aren't doing? Is it because they're a lighter tone than us? Is it because they're different from us?
Do you feel like social media is decreasing the prestige of D9 organizations?
yes,
Hell yes.
Explain how.
it definitely waters it down. It makes it look like all we do is stroll, all we do is step, all we do is ridicule people. Some people don't know how
But
to
when you
act
say
on it.
that, sometimes some people criticize D9s and they're like, that is all that they do. But when you were explaining earlier, sometimes it's because the resources aren't there to even be impactful on campus.
Exactly.
So when it comes to social media and, you know, that being like some people's, you know, process and not be on there, or when they, you know, cross or whatever, they come back on social media and, you know, post it and things like that. And that becomes something that people look forward to. And some people, to an extent, that's pretty much why they want to join. So as we move into this next decade, how do you, like you guys have graduated, how do you perceive how Greek life is going to look like in the next 10 years?
Well, I will say that, like, one thing that I will say as someone who's in the Greek life, and for someone who also takes a step back and, like, looks at it from, you know, overall, especially from a social media standpoint, we're looked at as a joke nowadays. People make jokes, like Wild 'N Out makes jokes about it. You know, you watch different TV shows, they make jokes about it. Something that used to be so prestige and so important and prevalent within the Black community, something that helped the Black community evolve in different ways. Civil rights, you know, helping with, we help with a multitude of things. Kids, people who don't have food, people who need education, scholarships, and etc. We're looked at as a joke, and the reason why is because of people who are letter wearers. People who are letter wearers are people who don't do anything but join an organization. And these same people go on social media and talk about something that's supposed to be discreet, aka, almost says AKA. But, also known as, you know, whether it's your quote unquote process, just whatever you do to join your organization, whatever that consists of.
Yeah, and pillow talking. Like,
Right.
A lot of niggas in their fraternities be pillow talking about their Greek problems in their process with their girlfriends. I'm sure it's the other way around for sororities.
It's not even just that. Honestly, I remember as a Neo, we would sit down with our stands, and our stands would tell us everything. We would just sit there like, we would never tell you anything we went through.
Dang.
But they would tell us everything. Everything, you know? And if they did that to us, imagine how many other people they did that to. And so now that, you know, all these things are social media, people are making jokes about it. It's no longer looked at as something as important. Greek life is a joke now, especially on my campus. It's a joke. And we're not even going to talk about the people in the organizations.
I think some of that came from like the movies about it.
My next question was going to be, what is your opinion on the Netflix movie Burning Sands, and what does Burning Sands mean to you?
Well, let me say, for the last part of answering your question, I think that in 10 years, the time even we have kids and they go to college, it's not going to be a thing of, you know,
Burning Sands.
yeah, if you will. Even just the basics, I don't really think it's going to be anything as prestigious as now. I don't think it's going to be as hard as it is to get in.
It's funny because when you speak to people in their 50s and 40s, they feel the same way about the past 10, 20 years of people.
Definitely. And when I hear stories about my frat brothers from my chapter who crossed in the 80s and the 90s, like the stories they tell me are like, you got it.
You got it.
Like, but like, if it's as watered down from then to now as it is, like I can only imagine how watered down it'll be by the time I have a son or a daughter who
If it
she
even
tries.
still exists.
Yeah, because is another reason why we don't have like houses and stuff is because we pay so much in insurance. Because people have these hazing allegations and like they have all these hazing incidents, and that raises the insurance prices every time there's a lawsuit against the organization.
And for me, there's a difference between hazing and pledging. I feel like some people exaggerate in the things they do. You don't need to dislocate somebody's whatever in order for them to get whatever that you're trying to teach them. There's different ways to go about different things. And so I feel like a lot of people have lost view of the fact that pledging is important and what pledging is, and so they haze, and which leads to further problems, you know, if they even do any of that.
Yeah, hazing was like made illegal in 1990, and I think that low-key was a big mistake.
And that's when the intake process started officially for Black Greeks specifically.
Yeah, and so like I think like when they, instead of making hazing illegal, it should have just been like limited and monitored. Because whenever, like even in American history, like America for some reason doesn't learn from its mistakes, and that's a whole nother conversation. But they talked about, instead of like if you look at prohibition, they did, when they made it illegal, it just made a whole bunch more crimes.
So
And it made it,
basically,
like, cool.
making hazing illegal, making anything illegal that people participate in just opens the black market and the underground world of it, which can't be controlled. Because from my understanding, way back when, people would see people getting hazed on the way to class. Like, it wasn't anything that was hidden.
It was called training.
And feel free to correct me because I do not want to disrespect any of the Greek organizations. I love to learn, and I understand this would be a learning experience for our listeners as well who may not be as well informed. Right. But I do think it's interesting that I've heard that, you know, when I did my research, some Greeks who are older do believe that when it became illegal, it just opened the doors for people to just do even more dumb shit. Because, you know, it's not monitored and people go to the extreme to get things not seen or whatever. And you have college students who are like half adults. Basically, if you really think about it, you have people from the age of 18 to 23.
Your own age mates
in control of a process that has history. So to finish up on that, like, what is your opinion of the movie Burning Sands that is on Netflix, being that you are a Greek member?
I'm not gonna lie. It highlighted a lot of the problems in which I think need to be addressed. And some people really go through that, you know, and yeah, I mean, some people really go through that without saying too much. People go through that. And it's not just, I think it was a way to kind of show people, okay, like, but I also didn't like the fact that it only showed the negatives of Greek life, and that's the perception most people have. You know, that, oh, all they do is beat people, all they do is do this and that, which is not true. If anything you go through is to learn something, okay, in life. Whether it's through joining an organization or whatever the case may be, it's for a purpose, you know. But there are bad apples, as there are in every situation, every organization, in which, I mean, that movie, that Netflix special was highlighted that. And I think that people who do what was shown in the movie, yeah, they're the reason why there's a big problem now in our community, in the Greek community, and they contribute to some of the problems that we have now, honestly. And you didn't learn nothing. You don't learn anything, and then you come into these people, same people come to the chapter, and you ask yourself, why aren't they doing X, Y, and Z? Well, look at what you did to them. Look at how, whatever the case may be. I don't know.
What about you? What's your opinion on it?
That movie actually came out like right while we were like
right. Tell me about it.
It was like when we first got off, we sat down together as a line and watched it. It was definitely very annoying because it was a dramatization of how things went, like on like the most extreme scale possible. And like then rumors started coming out that it was based on a true story and all these other things, and it was just like if most of these things happened, like we wouldn't have let that go. Like that would not have been okay. Like nobody's spitting in my face. Nobody's punching me in my ribs, cracking my ribs, sending me to the hospital. Those things do happen some places, but it's like very, very rare. And majority, pretty much as a whole.
I know about the day where I've seen and I've heard about it. You know, I've known people who attended my school who went through that. You know what I'm saying? You know, so
I heard too.
Okay.
Yeah, but I think like, I don't know. I would say majority of Greek life thinks that that's wrong, and they don't do that. But there are pockets, and you need to get to know the people. If you're going to join an organization, you need to get to know the people and get a good feel. Because if they rock with you, they're going to like give you a little hint of what it's going to be like.
Right.
But
what does Burning Sands mean to you?
Burning Sands is
the term.
Oh, Burning Sands.
Oh my gosh.
It's like back in the day, Burning Sands used to be what it was called when you crossed over into the D9. Like you had to cross the Burning Sands. Well, and we still say that to this day. And we call our people that cross at the same time our sands because we cross the Burning Sands at the same time. And there's a lot of movies about Greek life. Well, not a lot, but there's a few movies out there about Greek life. I don't really like, what's the other one? School Days. It's all right.
Yeah, I don't really feel like there's any
accurate
depiction. That really
is that not what you guys would have preferred, since you guys have like some secrecy or discretion to your organization?
Well, yeah, but I feel like there's different ways to go about it. You can display it or depict it in a better light. Like I feel like there's only movies that depict Greek life, especially D9, in a negative light.
I would say if we start away from the topic of movies, like I know watching A Different World, like I was like, you know, that seems cool. Like I would want to do something like that. Sister? Yeah. Did she join a Greek organization?
Her parents are Greek, and they tried to get her to join Greek life.
Oh, okay.
I don't know.
I did not know that.
I don't think so.
Sister was one of those shows where you just kind of watch random episodes. Like I've never seen it in order.
Yeah,
so, you would see one episode and they just met, and the next thing they're in college, and the next thing they're in high school. Like I mean, I love the show, but me too. Or most of the 90s shows, since I was born in the 90s. So it's like, you know, all those shows, I didn't really get to experience them like in order unless I catch it on Hulu or Netflix or any of these streaming services. So I have another controversial question, and it's a two-part question. And the reason why I'm asking this is because I know people who experienced this when they either considering joining Greek or did become Greek. So the first question is just a short answer for both of you. How did your family react to you when you told them you were going Greek? What did they say to you?
Oh my God. My African mommy. My mom was like, I'm not paying for that. And my dad was like, oh, like, it's a nice concept, you know, and I was like, okay, well, it's nice. It's a nice amount of money too. He was like, I'm not paying for that. So, but at the time I was a hustler. Okay, I made my own wage.
They weren't paying for it because they didn't agree that it was worth the money, because they didn't want you to join.
Good question. So culturally speaking, it wasn't even about the money. Culturally speaking, back home, where my family's from, I don't want to say it's frowned upon, but such things don't exist. Outside of America, such things don't really exist unless you talk about Prince Hall Mason, Freemason types, masonry, or in Africa, cults, And so my mom really was under the impression that it was a cult. And there was a moment where she got over it and she really saw like the benefits organization. But I mean, when things kind of hit the fan as of recently, she went back to like, I told you not to join that org. But nevertheless, I had my own funds, so I was able to pay for it myself without really caring. And I don't regret it, but she still discouraged me along the way, to the point where, there was a moment where I was just like, I'm really broke.
I know a lot of African and Caribbean students who cross and didn't even tell their parents they were crossing.
I think that's too much.
I know people who their parents don't even know that they're Greek. Their parents were not invited to the probate because it was frowned upon as something that is evil, or something that should be frowned upon, not acceptable, or that's not what they were sent to school for. I know even myself, when I was considering Greek life, when I was in college, I had an older cousin who went Greek, and I was very shocked because I didn't have anyone in my family that had done it successfully, because everyone, especially coming from a highly religious background, it was seen as something that was bad. And I remember even my mom talking to me about my cousin crossing, was like, I hope you don't ever think about doing that. And I was just like, oh, well, I actually was like this semester, but so even for me, like, paying for it, I was like, damn. Like, when I found out how much I was going to have to put up for it, I was like, well, this is basically going to have to be just me funding it, because my parents damn sure aren't going to do it. This is going to be a situation where I was probably going to be one of those students who went through the process and like be like, hey, do you want to come to this little event?
It takes time. I know someone else who, she was, in the process of joining, and she didn't tell her parents. Her dad was okay with it, but her mom was not okay with it, so she didn't tell her mother.
Is she African?
Okay. Eventually, she told her mom, and it took some convincing. But I think that if you join for the right reasons and your parents see the benefits, then they get over it. My mom, it took her like 2 years, but whatever. It took her 2 years in order to understand, okay, maybe this is really not as bad as I thought it was. Now, would she tell my sister to join my organization specifically due to whatever I was going through? Heck no. But she's definitely not against my sister joining a D9 organization. And I try to push my sister towards it anyways, because there's so many benefits. It opens a lot of doors. I was able to get my internship like that. I don't know what I was going through. I was going through something. But I had a lot of swords who were able to help me, older and young, It's like a family away from family. It's like a net before you fall, and which is really cool. So it takes time for our African or whatever foreign parents to understand the concept, but once they get it grasped, and once they see the benefits, usually they ride along.
How did your parents react, or your family react, when you told them you were considering going Greek?
Like my grandma and stuff, she didn't really understand. But my
did she go to college?
No.
So was her understanding from the fact that she didn't know, or she didn't like it?
We have some Greeks in our family, and she knew them and stuff. So she just knew about like the partying part and stuff. So like she understood to a certain degree. So she would make her comment, better not join this one, because they don't do good stuff. I think my mom really liked it, because my mom was an early parent, so she didn't go to college traditionally. When she went to school, it was years later, and she had 4 kids already. So she didn't really get to experience campus life. So I think it was dope for her. She kind of tried to live through me a little
bit. That's nice. But, did you feel like you had support from your family through the process? Or like in general?
My family isn't very emotional. So like I kind of was on my own when it came to like like support in that fashion. I also had to fund it myself just because she couldn't pay for it.
Do a lot of Greeks end up in situations where they do have to fund it themselves from your observation, or do they usually get support from their family or community to join?
It really depends. I mean, it depends.
I think it's a case-by-case basis.
Yeah, it's case by case. I mean, sometimes if you don't have the money, and you're really a good candidate, people will put up the funds for you at the end of the day.
So moving on to like the second half of the question, how do you feel about people comparing Greek life to Masonry, the Illuminati, and other cultic organizations? Because it's definitely something that people say.
I think Masonry is a very safe comparison because one of the founders of my organization was a Freemason. But at the same time, like there's always been this big thing about demonization of Freemasonry in Greek life.
Do you feel like it shouldn't be demonized?
I'm not a Freemason, so I don't want to speak on their organization. But as far as a member of D9, no. If you are like praying to your organization or idolizing it, you weren't taught that you were.
That's what you for real.
That was something that you came up with, because it's not like I was taught anything to be like, well, you shouldn't be praying to God. You should be praying to your organization. You know, we're higher than the Almighty. No, nobody said anything like that. I don't understand where this big misconception comes from. There are very many pastors, even famous pastors, who are widely like recognized as like to be in the top of the church, who are members of D9 organizations in Greek life in general. So I just think that it's like a unhealthy thing of where like a lot of people don't understand, so they make assumptions.
Right, I agree. But I mean, I will say that like Masonry is, first of all, Mason, Freemason, all that. It's one of the oldest organizations in which we kind of took after them. And when I say took after them, like just kind of like, I don't know, like structure and things of that sort. But, you know, obviously we're two different organizations. I mean, we're different in general. But I agree with him as far as idolizing. Well, I will say there's certain things that we say that I don't agree with. And no one's forcing you to say anything. Like, no one forces you to do anything. You know, if you don't agree with something, don't say it. If you feel like something's against your views, don't do it. You know, there's some people who I do feel like idolize our letters, I guess, or organizations in which I feel like is extremely bizarre. And if you do that, I'm praying for you. There's no reason for you to do that. God's first, or whatever, whoever you believe in is first, and then everything else falls afterwards, you know? I would never sit here and say that my org is before God, or I'm going to put my org before anything else I have to do, because at the end of the day, I pay my org, they don't pay me. So, boom.
Okay. I was going to ask about just, you know, I came to the realization when I was like reading more about the Illuminati, and I don't want to say the first time I heard about it, but I know when I was in high school, my pastor talked to me about it, and he basically was like, you know, you should stop listening to hip hop and R&B, which are two genres that are predominantly Black. And he was basically like, you know, most of these artists, like anyone who ascertains a certain amount of money, is a part of the Illuminati. And now that I'm older, I'm like, my question to you, why do Black people associate high levels of success with being equal?
Can I take this one? I think a huge thing, one of my favorite rappers said, I'm going to go ahead and quote him like verbatim. He said, these next 3 bars is dedicated to the retard. Keep on talking to me about Illuminati. Is you stupid nigga? Young Black millionaire, old white billionaire. I'm sure that they can do it without me. And I ain't really into sacrificing human bodies. So like, I think a big thing with it is like, why? I think Black people as a whole just like look to what's the word I'm looking for? Look to define why someone's more successful than them. And sometimes they be like, oh, well, this person must have sold their souls to the devil. And it's like, why can't they just work hard?
You know, I feel like that's because if you think about it, especially when it comes to specifically Christianity, like Christianity is a religion that was forced upon minorities. And today, minorities are more religious than the people who brought the religion to us.
Very much so.
And minorities are also at the same rate given less resources to be successful. And through religion, we're given this idea that if we consistently respect and obey a religion, that we will become happy. And if being successful is something that's given to us, then that's just what happens. And if it's not, that wasn't part of the plan. And I feel like when it comes to the Illuminati, or like people who, and the thing is, even in the African culture, it's even if it's not Greek or not Freemasonry, people who are religious, you would hear people say rumors about them, like, oh, they sold their soul to become this successful and this and that. And I feel like a lot of Black people have this mentality where it's like you were saying, like, oh, well, I pray to God too, and I've been praying for years, and I've been doing this and this, and I'm not that successful, or my child is not that successful. So if this person modeled the same beginning as I did, they must have done something else that's not in the books to get to where they are. Right. I do hope in the next couple of years that idea changes, because I feel like that limits Black people from becoming successful, almost to the point where people, especially I feel like some Africans and Caribbeans, fear of being successful to an extent because they don't want to be perceived as evil. They want to be perceived as humble. And some people believe that you can't be humble and successful to that extent at the same time. Like, oh, you can be rich, but once you become a millionaire, oh yeah, you did something bad to get to where you are. And like, in a nutshell, like that's just one thing I would appreciate, or I definitely suggest people stop doing or perpetuating on other people, especially youth, just so they can broaden their horizons, because even like we spoke about earlier, when it comes to Greek life, it's something that benefits people, I think so. And being someone who has African parents, I respect Greek organizations for what they've done for the Black community. I definitely think the whole idea of having a D9 was very influential and very impactful for Black people in this country. And when you look at other countries, there's not anything similar. And I feel like HBCUs and D9s in general is one of the reasons why Black people are successful today. If you look up some of the most successful Black people, as you spoke about, a lot of them either went to an HBCU and were empowered through that, or they joined a D9 organization. Both of those things benefit you in a certain way. And those are two things that were created for Black people to benefit them. So if you're already giving an image that is evil, you're not doing Black people in the world any good. So just kind of wrapping up on that, is there any like last comments, concerns, questions you guys would want to share with anyone concerning Greek life and or anything like that, just to wrap it up?
Don't believe what you hear.
Mm-hmm.
You'll never know what it can do for you until you join.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, if you're joining for the right reasons, whatever the reasons may be, don't shy away from it because of different people's experiences.
Mm-hmm.
Have your own, and I don't know. I definitely cannot say that I regret going Greek. I love every part of it. I love the people I've met. I love my line sisters. And I love my org, honestly.
Just like she said, don't buy into everything you hear. A big thing that people say is like, we don't do anything. But you have to realize that these organizations are actually funded by the people who are in them. So if you're at a school and it's a whole bunch of kids in it, then the kids are funding all their events. Mm-hmm. So you can only expect so much of them. When you get out of school, like the philanthropy really picks up a great deal, because you're dealing with Black professionals, not just Black college students. And if you're going to join, do it for the right reasons. Don't do it because you want to be cool. You can go... You can be cool by running for SGA.
It can be a lot cheaper route to be cool.
Exactly. Campaign is way cheaper than dues. You can, so if you're going to join, do it because you care about your community. Do it because you want to better yourself. Don't just do it for the clout.
Okay. So thank you guys for listening. Thank you guys for being here. I don't take you guys being here lightly at all. I really appreciate you giving us your insight, educating people on Greek life. And my target audience for this is not just Black people in America. There's Black people in other countries who don't understand Greek life. So I'm glad that you guys were able to educate some people, give some feedback. Once again, to my listeners, follow us on Nubian Incognito on different social medias. Respond online if there's anything you want to question or comment about. And yeah, we out.
Nubian Incognito.